Tyrena's surface was quiet, too quiet. The patrol ship Achilles glided over the barren terrain, its hull catching faint glints from the system's dying star. Inside the control deck, the crew sat half alert, cycling through routine scans and sipping recycled coffee. Then came the tone, short, sharp, invasive. "Lieutenant Ishida," barked Captain Henrik Salazar, leaning over his console. "Run that again." "Sir, I don't think it's a malfunction." Ishida tapped the command. A series of pulses blinked onto the central screen, high-energy discharges, concentrated over Nithara. Another officer, Ensign Korolev, narrowed his eyes. "That's not an exercise. Sir, we're picking up heat spikes, multiple surface impacts, large-scale bombardment." Salazar moved without a word. He pushed past his helmsman and slammed a fist against the command interface. The external optics turned toward Nithara. No one spoke. The image that unfolded on the main screen tore the breath from every man on the deck. Nithara was burning. Flares of blinding light erupted across its surface. Dozens, no, hundreds, of kinetic detonations and high-energy beam strikes poured down from orbit. Towers collapsed like dust. Firestorms swallowed entire sectors. People, millions of them, had no time to scream. The entire northern hemisphere of the colony glowed with unnatural fire. Shockwaves rippled visibly across the upper atmosphere. Then came the dispersal torpedoes, blooming out in surgical lines, incinerating infrastructure, vaporizing evacuation pads. Salazar didn't blink. His hands dug into the edge of the console, his jaw locked. His home, Nithara, the place where his wife and son had last waved to him before his departure, was vanishing before his eyes. "I want a tactical feed now," he growled. "Already pulling satellite telemetry," Korolev answered, fingers flying. "There's no warning, no hails, no identification codes." "Targeting pattern is grid cleared," said Ishida, voice flat. "Whoever's doing this, they're not just destroying a city, they're erasing it." Salazar's breath was uneven. His scarred hand reached up to his earpiece, adjusting it for clarity. "Get me orbital vectors. I want ships. I want IDs." "Nothing on registry," replied Ensign Verhoeven, his voice barely above a whisper. "But I've got energy signatures, exotic cores, torpedo yields consistent with high-yield plasma, beam arrays, tuned at velocities I've never seen before." Salazar's eyes locked onto the screen. The last spire of Nithara's central district cracked, then folded inward in a slow, cruel spiral of fire and smoke. "How many?" Ishida began. 9 million, Salazar roared. He took a step forward, fists clenched so tight his knuckles paled. 9 million souls, mothers, fathers, children. That was my city, my people. His voice broke at the edges. He wasn't a man given to theatrics. He had fought in the siege of Karmev Prime, bled in the trenches of Dalkor. But this was different. His voice dropped to a low, guttural growl. "Damn you, Korvarn, I'll make you bleed for this." The room froze. Even the low hum of the Achilles engine seemed to falter. But then came Lieutenant Ishida's voice, quiet, hesitant. "Sir, we're not seeing their signature. It doesn't match their tactics." "What?" Korolev swallowed. "We're not picking up their drive signatures. No spike readings, no gravity scars from their cruisers. It's not Korvarn." Salazar leaned over the station, breathing hard. His gaze scanned the playback telemetry. "Then who?" "Stand by." Verhoeven adjusted the filters. He leaned in, sweat beating down his temple. "We've got a trail. Faint. But there. A quantum surge. Looks like a long jump trail." "Where to?" Salazar asked, voice tense. Verhoeven hesitated. "Sir, the drive wake points directly to the dead zone." Everyone froze. Ishida leaned in, confirming the readings. "He's right. That's Velkethan space." Salazar straightened, silent for a full 5 seconds. The Velkethan dead zone was more than forbidden. It was untouchable, not by treaty, by fear. No species ventured into it. No scans returned. Nothing crossed it, and nothing came out. Until now. Bring up all intel from the last 6 hours on that sector. Sensor scans, patrol logs. I want all of it dumped into Central Command's relay. Already transmitting, sir, Korolev said, his hands shaking as he finalized the uplink. Salazar, Ishida said quietly. Sir, we need to notify command. Full priority alert. Salazar's eyes were still locked on the main display. Nithara's atmosphere now shimmered with a dull orange haze, the product of millions of incinerated bodies, fused steel, and volcanic gas from ruptured fault lines. The colony's orbital defense platforms were dark husks. No survivors, Ishida added. The whole grid is gone. Salazar's face didn't move, but a tremor ran through his voice. Someone planned this. Whoever they are, they knew our protocols. They struck fast, precise. No warning, no hails, no mistakes. Verhoeven's console chirped. Transmission complete, sir. Relay is up. Central will have it in 30 seconds. A low rumble filled the deck as the Achilles changed orientation. The ship's optical sensors pivoted to track the fading energy trail. Salazar exhaled slowly, one hand pressed to the viewport glass. 9 million dead, he said. They weren't soldiers. They weren't a threat. They were families. My family. His voice hardened. They didn't even try to speak to us. They didn't issue demands. They just erased us. He turned to his crew. This is war, and this time, we won't wait for permission. The screen went black. The image feed severed as the last comm buoy over Nithara crumbled under a precision strike. Across the galaxy, in the human Central Fleet Command orbiting Tyrax 3, the live feed from Achilles began to play. Officers paused mid-stride. Alarms triggered. Red banners of priority-class military destruction blinked into existence. Naval marshals and intelligence analysts gathered in silence as the final frames of Nithara's destruction played out. In a distant chamber aboard the Achilles, Salazar stood alone. His hands rested on the cold metal of the viewport, watching Nithara's light fade from the sky. No one dared interrupt. Not now. Not while a soldier of Earth watched his world die. The council hall blazed with artificial light. Hundreds of holographic delegates flickered across the tiers of the chamber, each projecting from systems spanning half the galaxy. Above them, the central spire pulsed a cold azure, indicating emergency protocol. Inside, the air felt charged. "We demand clarity," Admiral Tyrus Drouet's voice rang out across the comm grid, transmitted from Earth's fleet headquarters. His image stood among the delegates like a solid stone amidst shifting sand. 9 million civilians executed without provocation. We want answers, now. Across the chamber, a figure rose with unsettling calm. High Regent Dravion of the Velkethan stood tall and unmoving at the center platform, his form graceful and alien. He wore the ceremonial mantle of his kind, white, patterned with angular metal filaments that shimmered subtly with movement. His 4 arms remained neatly folded across his chest, long fingers intertwined in a motionless display of serenity. His head, elongated and smooth, tilted ever so slightly. The blank, pupilless eyes of his species gave no indication of emotion. When he spoke, his voice was a liquid echo. "The tragedy at Nithara wounds us all," he began, "but the evidence is unambiguous. The Korvarn acted alone. Rogue warbands seeking retribution for the concessions forced upon them by this council. And now, they attempt to sow discord between trusted species." A pause followed, just enough to let the words settle like acid. Salazar, now reinstated and standing beside the primary Earth envoy aboard the human diplomatic cruiser Delphus, clenched his jaw. The scar across his temple twitched. His knuckles were white where his hand gripped the rail. The feed shifted to a pre-compiled display of evidence. Orbital footage, fragments of telemetry, artificially degraded signals, all pointing to the Korvarn. But Salazar had seen real battle data. This wasn't it. Lies, he muttered. Dravion raised one arm and made a circular gesture in the air. The Council's automated systems pulsed, and the next sequence began. A declaration of sanction is in motion, Dravion continued. Effective immediately. The Korvarn shall be stripped of hyperspace corridor access in 5 trade sectors, and their sovereign defense grid within the Drelkar systems will be deactivated until further review. Within their embassy chambers on the opposite end of the council spire, the Korvarn sat in grim silence. Clad in battle-worn armor, their broad, scaled frames remained still, but their claws flexed against the metal floor, scratching faint lines with each tense breath. One of them, Commander Kaymore, removed his ceremonial gauntlet and placed it on the floor beside him in a quiet display of submission. More than ritual, less than defeat. His reptilian features, thick-ridged forehead, crimson eyes, jagged lines where horn stubs emerged near the crown, remained expressionless. But behind him, the rest of the delegation shifted with restrained fury. None spoke. Back on the Delphus, Salazar stepped forward, disrupting the official speaking queue. The human envoy tried to halt him. He ignored it. "Dravion!" Salazar's voice cut through the room. "You're selling us a fiction." Dravion turned his head slowly, blinked once. "You present fragments," Salazar continued. "Doctored telemetry. Heat-smeared traces of torpedoes no one can trace. But I saw Nithara die. I saw the strike pattern. Those were coordinated surgical kills, not rage-fueled warbands." "You overstep, Captain," Dravion said with the faintest tilt of his head. "This is not a military hearing." "Exactly. That's the problem," Salazar replied, voice rising. "This isn't justice. It's theater. The Korvarn didn't do this, and deep down you all know it." A murmur swept through the chamber. Admiral Drouet activated a new channel, visible only to a few key human military officials. "Pull him out," he ordered to his adjutant. "We're not burning our last thread with the Council." Salazar didn't wait. He turned and left the Hollow Presence platform without dismissal. Inside the Delphus's secure operations room, 3 admirals and 2 intelligence officers awaited him. Drouet's projection stood to the side, arms crossed, face hard as steel. "You're out of line," Drouet said bluntly. "And they're out of truth," Salazar shot back. "You saw the patterns. You saw the drive signature Verhoeven pulled." Verhoeven, standing at the console nearby, nodded. "Confirmed. The quantum distortion left by the attacking fleet is unlike anything the Korvarn fielded during the war. And it matches," Salazar finished it, "an ancient Velkethan signature, one used during their old deep space expansions, long before the dead zone was sealed." "Speculation," replied General Thomas Idrissi from Fleet Ops. "The Council will dismiss it unless we have hard evidence. Public, irrefutable." "We won't find that sitting here licking boots," Salazar snapped. "We know where the jump trace leads." "To the dead zone," said Idrissi. Salazar met his gaze, unmoving. "Exactly. Which is Velkethan jurisdiction," Idrissi added. "Any ship we send is considered a hostile act." "Maybe it's time we stop asking permission," Salazar replied. A long silence followed. From a corner of the room, Commander Lucian Stenmark, head of Earth Fleet Intelligence, cleared his throat. "There's more." He stepped forward, placing a data shard onto the central table. The projection expanded. "These are classified recordings from 3 deep-range listening buoys deployed 2 years ago. They caught encrypted military transmissions bouncing from the dead zone rim. Language structure, Velkethan. Pattern, coordinated fleet movements. The timestamps match the hour before Nithara burned." Everyone in the room stood silent as the data scrolled. "They're hiding something," Stenmark said. "The Korvarn are a smokescreen, a convenient target." Drouet exhaled slowly. "And if this gets out, we're in open conflict with the most powerful species in the Council." Salazar stepped toward the display. "They already made it a war. We're just the ones pretending it isn't." Back within their embassy chamber, The Corps Varn delegation remained seated, silent, watching the sanctions scroll across their holographic field. Embargoes, disarmament, communications cut. Kamor, now alone, lifted the gauntlet again and placed it back over his forearm. The armor hissed as the seals locked into place. He didn't speak. But as the door closed behind him, his gaze held a promise. This wasn't over. Static laced the transmission, each pulse sharper than the last. Inside the subterranean vault, beneath the Naval Signal Archives on Gethin Station, a cluster of analysts gathered around a single feed, their faces lit by a flickering console. "Play that last fragment again," said Commander Lucien Steenmark, voice flat but tense. The technician complied. On the screen, a string of distorted symbols rotated mid-air, compressed Velkethan syntax, military-grade encryption, at least 3 centuries out of use. But the metadata, the timestamp locked it within hours before Nithara's annihilation. Steenmark leaned in. "Match that encoding to all known legacy Velkethan transmission layers. I want overlap, signal rhythm, signature modulation, everything, and cross-reference with their retired command dialects." Behind him, his second-in-command, Lieutenant Aaron, nodded. "Already on it, sir. Fragmentation is heavy, but there's a partial match to something tagged Project Fallpoint, classified Velkethan directive from before the Accord era." Stenmark's jaw tightened. They used an obsolete military cipher to coordinate an attack and buried it under corrupted redundancy. They knew we'd miss it. "Should we alert Fleet Command?" Aaron asked. Stenmark hesitated for only a second. "No. Not until we know more. For now, send this straight to Salazar." The comms room aboard the Delphus dimmed as the encrypted transmission stabilized. Captain Henrik Salazar stood rigid as the fragmented signal projection floated above the table. Velkethan code, spliced with synthetic routing echoes. The same pulse markers they had tracked from the dead zone. "They left a footprint," said Verhoeven, analyzing the data stream beside him. "It's like they didn't care if someone found it, or assumed we never could." Salazar stepped back, staring at the stream of alien symbols like they were ash drifting down from a burning sky. "They were confident," he muttered. "Too confident." A soft ping interrupted. Korolev turned from his station. "Sir, we're receiving a discrete ping. Source is Corps Varn space." Salazar turned, eyes narrowing. "Open it." The channel flared, and the projection of a Corps Varn transmission node flickered to life. No audio. Just a single set of coordinates and a glyph, an old symbol from the Pact of Drunum. A request for parley. The room fell silent. Korolev broke it. "That's a formal summons." Salazar nodded. "Get the Oberon ready. Minimal crew. Blackout run." Verhoeven straightened. "Sir, you're personally going?" Salazar's voice was low. "Yes. If they're reaching out now after everything we've accused them of, I want to hear it with my own ears." The Oberon cut through the void like a whisper. Only auxiliary lights ran along the spine. Every emission system was dark. On board, Salazar and a 3-man team sat in silence as the ship glided toward a derelict Corps Varn monitoring post, a forgotten satellite station near the border of the Sarn expanse. No movement, no escort, no signal flare. They docked in silence. The airlock cycled, and a soft hiss welcomed the humid, stale atmosphere of the Corps Varn vessel. Metal creaked. Lights buzzed faintly from old junctions. Inside, 3 Corps Varn stood in formation, massive armored figures with thick scaled skin. Their faces resembled draconic predators. Long, angular snouts, deep crimson eyes, and twin horn stubs protruding where hair should have grown. Their armor was matte black, scarred and old, but serviceable. One stepped forward, taller than the rest. "I am Kamor," he said, voice rough like stone grating against steel. "Commander of the First Fleet of the Vartok Line." Salazar stepped forward. "Henrik Salazar, Captain, Earth Defense Command." No weapons were drawn. No guards moved. Just silence. Kaymor extended a heavy arm and opened a data node embedded into his gauntlet. A projection formed between them, 3 warp trail signatures, all converging near the rim of the dead zone. Their timestamps matched the moment the first detonations hit Nethera. "Your colony was not our doing," Kaymor said, his tone more subdued now. "But we saw it. We saw the void scream and the fire rain." Salazar's brow furrowed. "You were watching?" Kaymor inclined his head. "We monitored a sector in anticipation of Council betrayal. They sanctioned us as scapegoats. We needed to know what came next." "You believe the Velkethan did this?" "We know," Kaymor replied. "We detected the jump scars. Our tracking relays, though degraded, logged it. The vector leads to the Starless Zone. Your kind calls it forbidden." Salazar stepped closer, inspecting the data. "Then we're not enemies." Kaymor's jaw tensed. "Our blood remembers war, Salazar. Your soldiers burned the orbitals at Valak. My kin still wear that ash in their lungs. But this," he gestured to the map, "this is not war. It is butchery." Salazar nodded slowly. "Then we stop it together." Kaymor regarded him for a long moment. Then, slowly, deliberately, the Korvarn commander reached up and disengaged the magnetic seal at his collar. The helmet hissed as pressure equalized. A faint tremor passed through the armor plates on his chest. Not hesitation, but memory. Then the hiss. Then the face. He removed it. The gesture was ancient in Korvarn culture. To show the face in an unsanctioned war zone was vulnerability, an offering of truth and resolve. Salazar looked him in the eyes, red and clear, ringed with fatigue. No deceit. He extended his hand. Kaymor studied it, then gripped it in silence. "Then we begin," he said. And the alliance, scarred, silent, bound by ghosts, was forged in the dark. The steel doors of Vanta Fortress slammed shut behind them with a finality that seemed to echo through the bones. The war chamber was carved from the remnants of an old asteroid refinery, now repurposed with overlapping alloys of Korvarn durasteel and human carbon-bonded plating. It was the only place both sides agreed to meet, deep enough in neutral space to buy a conversation, armed enough to ensure it didn't end in blood. Kaymor stood still, his thick arms folded, claws lightly clicking against the plate of his left vambrace. The Korvarn delegation flanked him, armored and motionless. 8 warriors, all bearing the sigil of the Vartok line, black etched into scarred red plating. Their breath was slow, calculated, and filled the air with heat. Across the long table stood Salazar, arms behind his back, his fleet officers in sharp, dark navy uniforms. Beside him stood Commander Lucien Stenmark, silent and grim, and General Anton Yamane, a hard-edged veteran with deep scarring down his right cheek from the siege of Kalex. Every man here had tasted war, and no one trusted the other. "This alliance is a farce," barked General Garval, a second-born Korvarn warrior, his eyes glowing dimly. "You think we forget the orbital burnings of Heskor? Your fleets poisoned our skies." Yamane stepped forward, eyes locked. "And how many of our medical vessels did you vaporize over Traskin's Reach? You brought total war to our colonies. Don't preach purity." Kaymor raised a clawed hand, silencing Garval with a glance. "We didn't come here to dig through ashes," Kaymor said. "We came to decide who burns next, us or them." The room went quiet. Salazar exhaled. "Agreed. So let's talk logistics." A holomap ignited above the table, blue and crimson grids rotating into position. Dozens of stations marked in orange blinked slowly, their status listed as dormant, offline, or decommissioned. Salazar pointed to 5 deep-orbit facilities once used by Earth's 9th Fleet during the Frontier expansion. Kaymor marked 3 similar locations in what had been the Korvarn Southern Combat Corridor during the old conflict. "We reactivate these outposts," Salazar said. We refit the dry docks, bring the storage vaults online, and convert the old asteroid belts into field depots. You'll need crews, Kamor replied. Your engineers don't know our systems. Stenmark gestured to the side, where a bank of technicians watched the feed. We already began parsing your fusion parameters. Give us 2 weeks. We'll rewrite half your bootloaders, Garval growled. You'll rewrite nothing. Salazar's voice cut through. Either we combine strength, or the Velkathan pick us off like diseased cattle. That silenced them. After hours of aggressive exchanges, long silences, and quiet nods from behind clenched jaws, the room arrived at an agreement, a joint force, a unified command. Salazar and Kamor would lead it together. And so the machines stirred, the crews deployed, and Vanta Fortress bloomed into action. Drones swarmed decommissioned hangars, stripping corrosion from hulls, older than most of the men, reactivating them. Human commandos swept through overgrown fuel vaults with rifles raised, clearing infestations and reprogramming dormant AI sentinels. Korvan specialists rewired old shield arrays with brutal efficiency, sometimes hammering them into functionality with sheer strength and improvised tools. Their mechanics used clawed gauntlets with magnetized braces to drag cables half a meter thick across fractured decks. 1 week in, 40,000 ships were ready. 2 weeks, 140,000. By the end of the 6th cycle, over 999,000 vessels hovered across 100 staging sectors. Frigates with plasma javelin pods, carriers capable of launching 1,000-strong fighter wings, Korvan cruisers armed with kinetic charge spines, Earth dreadnoughts bearing neutron lances that hadn't fired since the burning of Tursis. The Delphus, now refitted as the central command vessel, linked with Kamor's flagship, the Varrock, via a secure lattice beam, relaying tactical protocols and staging routes through a combined AI structure named Orion Ket. Still, the tension burned beneath every transmission. Human officers bristled at the Korvan's impatience, their tendency to ignore phased execution in favor of brute application. The Korvan resented the humans' endless layers of protocol, seeing it as hesitation born from fear. Salazar and Kamor mediated every dispute, every delay, every hostile glare across a planning console. It wasn't respect, not yet. But the gears moved, until the Council responded. The first sabotage struck at Depot Lambda 6, a human-controlled munitions satellite near the Myros belt. Explosives planted in the cryo-fuel tanks ruptured the entire west spindle, killing 92 engineers and crippling the depot's launcher arms. No trace. The second came during a cargo transfer. A Velkathan drone, disguised as a defunct relay bot, injected a viral payload into the combined AI feed, corrupting jump path calculations. A carrier squad misjumped directly into the gravity well of Urkos 6. The wreckage burned in orbit for 4 days. Then the transmissions began. Unlabeled packets across encrypted bands, sent to Council-aligned media hubs. Unlawful human Korvan military buildup detected. Threat to galactic order. The fringe factions attempt armed rebellion under pretense of justice. Unauthorized militarization in violation of Accord Directive 014. The Council called it a mutiny. Dravian himself issued a proclamation. All participating members of this rogue coalition shall be considered enemies of galactic peace. Their stations are forfeit. Their ships unauthorized. Their movements treason. Salazar received the message while standing over a loading bay filled with cryo-shell warheads. He didn't flinch. Good, he said. Let them name it. Kamor, standing beside him, turned slightly. We don't run from war. Salazar nodded. We didn't start this one. Outside the bay, a field of ships darkened the void, forming the greatest fleet either of them had ever seen. And still, the real fight hadn't begun. The starfield collapsed into fog. As the Allied fleet breached the outer rim of the dead zone, the void shifted. No longer a sea of familiar constellations, the darkness here was thick, alive. Dull blue clouds writhed across sensor arrays like oil in water. Interference surged through communications. Comms officers scrambled on every deck as subspace channels degraded into static. Navigation pings vanished. Long-range scans returned phantom images. Dozens of ships where there were none, shadows moving against logic. Inside the command deck of the Delphus, Salazar stood behind the holotable, eyes locked on the projection. Dozens of friendly signals blinked erratically. Static shimmered where fleet formations should be. 2 carrier groups already gone from visual sync. Korolev's voice crackled through the ambient distortion. Sensor arrays at 30%. We've lost galactic alignment, and backup grid tracking is scrambled by interference. Starfield pattern recognition compromised. Kaymor's voice came in from the Var Rock, his tone clipped and sharp. This void eats light. The zone breathes deception. Salazar adjusted the neural relay on his temple and spoke into the command uplink. All formations maintain vector cohesion. Local comms only. Prepare for adaptive routing. Expect unpredictable engagement. Across the silent cloudscape, 900,000 ships moved through layered mist and shadow. Then the first strike hit. A flash of crimson lanced through the dark. No warning, no visible projectile. Just light and death. The human cruiser Kestrel vanished from the board, its comm beacon severed mid-transmission. Moments later, the wreckage appeared on short-range scans, tumbling in silence, venting fire and frozen bodies into the storm. Confirmed loss. Kestrel, Verhoeven said. His voice was thin. 0 escape pods. Coordinates? Salazar demanded. Unknown origin. No launch path. No energy buildup. Sniper kill, muttered Yamane from across the deck. They're testing us. The second attack came in seconds later, this time aimed at a Korvarn destroyer, the Torkar's Veil. But it missed. The energy bolt carved across the ship's upper hull, vaporizing half the dorsal cannons. The vessel spun, trailing smoke, but held course. Kaymor's voice erupted. Break formation, adaptive clusters, pattern Gamma 4. The Varrock surged ahead, and the fleet shifted with it. 1,000 small craft swarmed into tight formations, overlapping shield geometries and rotating their EM profiles to confuse further targeting attempts. 3 minutes passed. Then, from the clouds, the Velkathan appeared. Their patrol ships moved like precision scalpels, sleek, needle-shaped constructs clad in reflective plating that shimmered in and out of visual range. No heat signatures, no weapon charge-ups. Their attacks were silent flashes, followed by ruptured hulls. But the Alliance adapted. Kaymor's strike wings flanked the first ambush group, pushing through with brute velocity. Human interceptors broke from escort routines, looping wide to cut the Velkethan retreat vector. On the Delphus, Salazar issued firing sequences to overlapping batteries. Target ion bursts on entry points. Suppression fire. Push them back into the dust. The counterattack broke the pattern. 4 Velkethan craft were destroyed in the span of 30 seconds. Their hulls shattered without detonations, folding inward like implosions. The remainder scattered, diving into the dense clouds and vanishing without trace. Breath returned to the fleet, but it was shallow. 6 hours later, in orbit over a fractured moon within the zone, Salazar sat in the war room aboard the Delphus, blood still smeared across his left sleeve from helping the medics carry out the last survivor of Kestrel's engineering team. Kaymor stood opposite him, helmet clutched in one clawed hand, jaw tight. They weren't alone. Yamane and Stenmark sat at the table, faces pale. General Varun, a veteran from the Corridon push, patched in via secure link. 2 Korvarn captains, Garval and Thurik, remained standing near Kaymor, arms crossed, silent and watching. That silence broke with Verhoeven's voice from the operations console. We have a situation aboard the Varanok. One of their data officers discovered a breach in environmental control logs. There's no match to any authorized crew movement. Kaymor turned sharply. What are you saying? Verhoeven didn't hesitate. There's a Velkethan infiltrator aboard one of your ships. The table shook as Garval slammed a closed fist onto it. Treachery! Salazar rose from his seat. You're not helping. Thurick hissed low in his throat. One of them. Here. Yamane's eyes darkened. Then how did they get through? We scan every ship before departure. They didn't come with us, Steenmark said quietly. They were waiting here. Kaymor looked to Salazar. We must see it. In the holding bay of the Varanok under heavy guard, the Velkethan prisoner sat chained to a magnetic plate on the floor. His body was slight, clothed in torn white robes with fragments of reflective mesh sewn into the sleeves. 2 of his 4 arms were bound at the elbow, hands bloodied from when the Korvarn security teams had found him attempting to sabotage the fusion capacitors. His skin shimmered slightly, an opalescent hue beneath the dim light. His elongated skull tilted slightly as the group entered. His eyes, black and pupilless, stared at them with total absence of fear. "What's your name?" Salazar asked, stepping forward. No answer. Kaymor crouched low. "Speak, Shadow." Still nothing. Stenmark activated a localized translation scrambler. The Velkethan's throat pulsed, and then came the voice, thin, dry, and precise. "I am no name. I am result. You were sent to sabotage our ships," Kaymor growled. "I was placed," the Velkethan said. "Long before you came. We knew you would." Salazar narrowed his eyes. "Why target Varanok?" "The fleet is too large, too many paths. A destabilized node creates delay. Delay creates hesitation. Hesitation weakens resolve." Yamane crossed his arms. "You're stalling us." "No," the Velkethan said, head tilting slightly. "You stalled yourselves the moment you allied." Salazar stepped forward. "Why Nithara? Why the civilians?" He already knew the answer. He just needed to hear it said aloud. The Velkethan blinked slowly. "Nithara was necessary. You were becoming exponential." Kaymor's claws flexed. "And the Korvarn? Were we next?" "You were already declining, but redundancy is inefficient. If you joined forces, the algorithm shifts. So we acted first." Salazar's voice was steel. "We're not algorithms. We don't shift. We endure." The Velkethan gave no answer. Kaymor turned and nodded once to his guards. "Take him." Hours later, in the interrogation data vault aboard the Delphus, Steenmark and Verhoeven filtered through the decoded fragments pulled from the Velkethan's personal uplink device. Half the data was locked in rotating quantum ciphers. But one section, fragmented and low priority, revealed a network of signal nodes hidden inside the dead zone. "Here," Verhoeven said, highlighting one cluster. "There's something buried in orbit around a collapsed planetoid. Intermittent pulse. It's broadcasting in an obsolete Velkethan command loop, one used 2 centuries ago." Salazar stepped forward. "Destination?" Verhoeven traced the vector. 17 hours from our position, but there's no charted object on any map. Stenmark leaned in. "It's not a base. It's a vault." Kaymor appeared in the doorway. "Then we open it." Salazar nodded once, and the fleet turned toward the silence. Tracer rounds streaked across the void as the Delphus led the assault formation toward a hidden orbital array, cloaked within the gravimetric folds of the collapsed planetoid, designated Theta Rin. It wasn't on any council registry. It didn't need to be. What lay beneath its fractured surface wasn't meant to exist. All units, primary thrust, breach vectors Alpha through Delta. "Focus fire on the dorsal arrays," Salazar commanded, his voice sharp, resonating through the combined fleet's encrypted channel. From the Varanok, Kaymor's growl followed seconds later. "Korvarn strike units, flank on Vector 6, target power cores, leave nothing standing." The orbital station erupted with unexpected resistance, turrets rotating from rock outcrops, kinetic shells hurling into the swarm of Allied ships. Fighters spiraled and dived through the opening salvos, formations splintering to avoid beam lances fired from deeply buried weapon banks. "Turrets 1 through 9 neutralized," reported Stenmark. "Hull breaches in sections Gamma and Tau, launching infiltration teams." Inside the fractured facility, shadows flickered under dim emergency lighting. Human Marines moved through narrow metallic corridors, rifles sweeping corners, while Korvarn breachers advanced behind with heavy blades drawn. Silent, methodical, lethal. The interior architecture was unmistakably Velkathan. Sloped walls, tall arched conduits, flowing biometric designs carved into steel that pulsed with embedded nanolight. "Found something," came the voice of Sergeant Ellen Price, transmission broken by interference. "Lower levels, sealed archive chamber. Looks old, pre-accord structure." Salazar arrived within minutes, flanked by Kaymor and a mix of both forces. The vault's central node glowed with faint lavender hues, surrounded by stasis cages filled with biological samples, some human, some not. What wasn't decayed was organized, labeled, cataloged. "Genetic sorting," Stenmark muttered, scanning the interface. "This isn't research, it's control." On the far wall, Salazar's hand found a console still active. He tapped into the last archived entry. A projection unfolded. A table of colony names and corresponding parameters, population density, economic yield, deviation potential. One entry pulsed red, Nithera. Kaymor stepped forward, the muscles in his jaw twitching as he read the classification. Phase 1, deletion. Planetary scale reset to assess socio-political destabilization triggers in surrounding systems. His voice barely escaped his throat. "We were statistics." Salazar nodded once, tight-lipped. "And we were the sample set." Stenmark uncovered another module beneath the floor panel, sealed in crystal casing. Inside, fleet directives, strategic movement overlays, and a list of scheduled deployments. The same glyph from the captured infiltrator's uplink repeated across each document. But before the data could be fully decrypted, the hull screamed. "Impact warning! Proximity breach!" came Korolev's voice through the comm. "Massive signature inbound, class unknown." The walls trembled, lights died. Shields on the Delphus flared under the sudden pressure of a gravitational field spike. Outside, the void ignited. A Velkethan dreadnought descended from behind the dark side of Theta Rin, black, angular, thrumming with unnatural force. It dwarfed everything in orbit, a silhouette shaped like a blade driven into the chest of space. "Get those transports clear," Salazar ordered as he sprinted for the docking bay. "We have what we came for." The dreadnought opened fire. Two human destroyers, Seraphim and Vexor, were cut in half before they could maneuver. Dozens of smaller craft vaporized under high-frequency plasma beams that sliced through kinetic shielding like mist. Korvarn interceptors screamed forward in retaliation, slamming into the dreadnought's hull in precise, brutal runs. Some detonated on impact. Kaymor took command of the left flank, his orders quick and relentless. "Do not scatter. Anchor on me. Cripple its flanks." Salazar coordinated countermeasures from the Delphus's command deck. "Charge spinal cannons. Stenmark, light up its weak points. I want breach estimates now." Ventral matrix shows hull fractures, exposed energy manifolds near sections 14 to 17. Firing solutions locked, Stenmark reported. "Then bury the bastard," Salazar growled. The Delphus and Var-Ruk advanced side by side, unleashing a synchronized volley of neutron lances and fused charge warheads. Explosions rippled across the dreadnought's spine. Sections of hull peeled away, revealing internal support scaffolds glowing hot with exposed reactors. But the Velkathan vessel fought back with terrifying efficiency. Its counterfire was surgical, targeting propulsion systems, jamming local comms, splintering coordination between wings. Then the Korakteth exploded. The blast lit up half the debris field. It had been Kaymor's second-in-command ship, a command vessel housing dozens of warriors. No escape pods launched. Kaymor watched the wreckage fall into the moon's gravity, fragments scattering like burning teeth. He didn't speak. Salazar saw it, said nothing. Seconds later, the Horizon Edge, a human support cruiser, took a direct hit to its core reactor and tore apart mid-spin. Lieutenant Commander Shaw was aboard. Kaymor, Salazar called through the comms, his voice iron. You stay focused, or we lose all of them. Kaymor answered, breath steady. Then we burn it from the inside. The Alliance reformed in layers. Human tactical groups launched EMP drones in flanking patterns while Korvarn boarding torpedoes rammed into the Dreadnought's underbelly. Seconds later, the Velkathon ship convulsed. Fires erupted across its upper hull. A reactor line cracked under pressure and began to destabilize. Now! Salazar shouted. All vessels, evacuate blast radius. The Dreadnought detonated from within, slow at first, then violently. A pulse of distorted light surged outward, collapsing the gravity fields that had distorted local space. The aftermath was silence. No shields, no comms, just the sound of systems rebooting across hundreds of battered ships. In the remains of the orbital vault, Korolev confirmed transmission. Files secured. Genetic archives, strategic logs, colony models, all transferred. We're packaging for wide-spectrum dissemination. Salazar stood on the bridge, shoulders tight, uniform stained with blood and coolant. His voice was hoarse. Get me Kaymor. The Korvarn appeared on the screen, face lined with soot, armor cracked, blood on his neck. Salazar held his gaze. We keep fighting like this. We lose 100 for every one of them. We move smart. We bleed less. Kaymor nodded slowly. Then we stay unified. No splinters, no pride, only purpose. Salazar gave a single nod. Below them, the ruins of Theta Rin drifted in silence, no longer a mystery but a monument to the cost of truth. Tharos eclipsed its own star. The collapsed sun pulsed dimly behind the superstructure that hung in its orbit, black against black, vast enough to distort local gravity. The installation was silent, invisible to all forms of passive scan. Only the data from Theta Rin had led the Alliance here. The Delphus and Varrock dropped out of warp at minimum signature range, accompanied by a skeleton task force of infiltration-class ships and jamming drones. Lights on the command bridge dimmed. All signals were silent. Shields were drawn low to avoid energy spikes. The crew barely breathed. Field perimeter detected, said Verhoeven, eyes locked on his console. Camouflage matrix is active. It's refracting across multiple spectrums. Light, grav, heat. Complete phase shift field. Meaning? Salazar asked, not looking away from the dark screen. Meaning we're blind, and they're not. Kaymor stood behind him. Can it be broken? Only with synchronization, Verhoeven replied. A biphasic destabilization burst, 2 simultaneous EMP spikes, precisely timed, from opposite vectors. One from us, one from your people. Salazar turned. You heard him. This isn't brute force. It's balance. Kaymor gave a brief nod. Then we align. Minutes later, the infiltration pattern began. 2 destroyers moved into polar opposition around the structure. Hunter's Wake and Thoric's Maw. Engineers from both sides loaded mirrored detonation codes into quantum warheads, tech from Earth, coils from the Korvarn, configured to detonate at a shared 0-point frequency. Final alignments complete, Verhoeven called. Vector lock confirmed. 3, 2, 1, execute. The void blinked. Twin pulses collided invisibly, crashing through the distortion field with harmonic disruption. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then Tharos ignited. The camouflage field collapsed with a shriek across subspace. The station became visible in full, angular, elegant, monstrous. Rings spun silently around its core like planetary debris trapped in orbit. Pillars extended into darkness, ending in emitter pylons. Weaponry or control nodes, none could yet tell. Inside, systems stirred. Lights awoke in slow ripples across the hull. The station hadn't been dormant, it had been waiting. Bring us in, Salazar ordered. The Delphus and Varrock drifted forward in tandem, their escort craft breaking off to begin breach operations along 3 access points revealed by the collapsed field. Salazar donned his rifle harness and helmet without speaking. Kaymor was already armed, claws sliding into place over reinforced gauntlets. "No commanders in the rear," Kaymor said. "Not today," Salazar replied. They boarded together. The docking clamps hissed. The airlock cycled with a low, grinding thrum. Then came silence. The interior of Tharos was silent, sterile. The corridors were silver and white, lined with etched script that pulsed with pale light. Surveillance nodes rotated silently. No defenses were triggered. It felt less like a fortress and more like a crypt. The strike team moved in 2 units, Human Section Delta, led by Salazar and Stenmark, and Corps Varn Blade 6, commanded by Kaymor and his adjutant, Rak Kol. At the core of the station, deep beneath the fusion pulse engine, they found the control archive. It was a cathedral. Cascading holotanks stretched up into the black dome overhead. Streams of data flowed like liquid through arched columns, every current alive with unreadable information. A raised dais stood at the center, a single control obelisk rising from it, veined with circuitry that hummed with cold menace. Verhoeven's voice came through the comm. "Sir, I'm connected. It's Velkathan logic, but I can ride the translation sublayers." "Do it," Salazar replied. "Dump everything. We don't leave blind." One by one, the records began to unlock. The first file was visual. A Velkathan tribunal, seated in elegant arcs of ivory stone. The figure at the center, unmistakable despite the robes, was Dravian. Audio emerged, staticky at first, then clear. Current growth exceeds predictive thresholds. Resource allocation projections indicate instability within 5 council cycles, species escalation beyond administrative tolerance. Another voice, unknown, higher in register. Recommendations? Dravian. Strategic resets. Controlled collapses. Begin with fringe zones, unstable demographic clusters, economically volatile sectors. Nethera first. More files poured in. Blueprints for virus infiltration models, projections of political reactions, estimates of acceptable civilian casualties. Population culling tables. Corps Varn colonies listed under second wave objectives. Kaymor stepped closer, silent. His eyes fixed on one file in particular, an annotated chart of military strength decay cycles. His homeworld, Veloshka, circled in red. Salazar didn't move. Kaymor's voice was low, trembling with something ancient and barely contained. "They planned our extinction like statistics." Salazar nodded slowly. That's what this was. Not war, calibration. Kaymor reached forward, claws dragging down the edge of the projection. "We bled in your skies, but it was never about vengeance." "Not really." His breathing sharpened. Rakkol stepped forward. "We take this place, turn it into wreckage, burn every trace." Kaymor did not speak. Salazar placed a hand on his forearm. "Hold." Kaymor turned, eyes burning. "You knew." Salazar's tone was quiet, but firm. "I suspected. Not this much." Kaymor's voice was barely a whisper. "They were going to erase us." Salazar leaned in. "Then don't waste your fury. Learn to aim it." Kaymor's jaw tightened, but he nodded. "We transmit," Salazar said. "Everyone sees this. The whole galaxy." Verhoeven's voice came back through the channel. "All data locked. Relay nodes set. You give the word, it goes live." "Do it," Salazar said. Outside Tharos, the fleet drifted in tight formation. Hundreds of ships, bruised but whole. And above them, satellites powered by Velkathan tech began transmitting bursts of encrypted data to every known system with diplomatic reach. The truth spread like fire. Salazar watched it happen from the command spire of Tharos, standing beside Kaymor. They said nothing as the first response signals began to return, shocked, chaotic, furious. The silence had ended, and the reckoning had begun. The transmission hit every system in the galaxy at once. Every embassy, every relay node, Every independent ship with a functioning receiver, no matter the species, language, or faction, was force-fed the same flood of data. It began with a silent pulse. Then came the images. Nithara engulfed in orbital fire. Civilians turned to ash beneath bombardments. Close-ups of Velkethan directives, annotated by their own hands. Dravian's voice captured in closed-room sessions, authorizing strategic resets and controlled collapses. Then, the names: Nithara, Veloshka, Traskin's Reach, dozens of colonies listed under elimination protocols, and finally, a time-stamped order, signed, sealed by High Regent Dravian himself. The galaxy responded like a wounded animal. The Tserakai sovereignty declared emergency severance from all council affiliations. The Ran Collective burned their embassy in Jarnis space and issued full mobilization alerts. Even the Hadrathi tribes, neutral for centuries, signaled unambiguous support for retaliation, transmitting a single phrase in their tongue: "We see the shadow. We follow the fire." On Tharos, orbit trembled. 900,000 ships formed an iron ring around the superstructure, aligned in concentric kill formations. Dreadnoughts, interceptors, cruisers, and stealth corvettes, all powered, armed, silent. Inside the Delphus, Salazar stood at the heart of the command deck, hands locked behind his back as the last data packets finished uploading from Tharos's archive. Around him, holoscreens pulsed with confirmation pings from every major faction. The truth had landed, and the galaxy was watching. On his left, Commander Lucien Steenmark adjusted the transmission repeater, rerouting civilian channels to ensure the message had reached the outer sectors. On his right, Korolev monitored shield formations and defense rotations. The room was steel still. Then Verhoeven spoke. "Incoming transmission from the Velkethan Council Chamber. It's Dravian. He's requesting visual interface." Salazar didn't move. "Patch it through," he said. Dravian's image appeared above the command table, serene, composed, and utterly undisturbed. His long, elegant face framed by metallic lines of his ceremonial robe. Behind him, the chamber was dark, silent. "I see you've made your move," he said, his voice calm as ever. "You have twisted our actions into propaganda, weaponized our governance against us. There will be consequences, Captain." "No," Salazar replied. "There won't." Dravian's mandibles twitched, almost imperceptibly. "You misunderstand the weight of the system you defy. You will destabilize sectors. You will trigger collapse." "You already did that," Salazar said. "We're just letting everyone see it." Dravian inclined his head, tone cooling. "You can still reverse this. I will address the council, reframe the incidents as miscommunication. Sacrifice a few administrative names. You will be restored, elevated." Salazar stepped forward into the center of the bridge. His voice rang across the deck, broadcast to every vessel in the Alliance. Truths were buried. Nithara was just the beginning. Now your facade falls before all. Without waiting for a response, he turned to Kaimor, who stood silent behind the tactical display. The Korvarn commander gave a slow nod, fangs visible beneath his fractured jawplate. Salazar raised his voice. "Kaimor, unleash all your fury." Kaimor's growl rumbled like stone cracking under pressure. "Alliance fleet, cleanse the sky." Tharos erupted. The sky came apart in every direction as the unified fleet surged forward. Human strike squadrons formed fractal assault patterns, weaving tight around Korvarn heavy barrages. Railgun flak combined with plasma wave salvos. Quantum torpedoes streaked beneath wing formations. Every vector struck surgical targets, power conduits, shield nodes, thermal exhaust points mapped by human intelligence and exploited by Korvarn aggression. The Velkethan defenses lit up, but too late. Dozens of their defensive platforms were vaporized before their systems aligned. Precision strikes from Earth's dreadnoughts sliced through mid-orbit relay beacons. Korvarn boarding pods drove straight into hangar plates and detonated on breach, allowing berserker units to pour inside. The sky above Tharos became a grid of fire and motion. Inside the station, emergency countermeasures triggered. But sabotage teams, inserted hours prior, had already compromised the primary AI kernel. Automated turrets rotated and collapsed. Defense drones spun helplessly as their guidance protocols failed. On the Varrock, Kaymor stood inside his command crucible, claws gripping the edges of the targeting matrix. Left flank, press the breach. Target reactor spine with cluster bombardment. On board the Delphus, Salazar coordinated pincer movements, redirecting 2 human battle groups around the rear of the station to collapse its gravitational stabilizers. "Pin them against their own orbital drift," he said. "I want pressure, no retreat lanes." The Alliance moved like one organism, each movement layered, each tactic overlapping. Velkathan command ships attempted to break the ring, but Korvarn gravity harpoons anchored them to kill zones. Human snipers fired tachyon disruptors into exposed weapon bays. Plasma rippled through shattered hulls as station defenses buckled and fell. "Reactor instability detected," Verhoeven shouted. "Core breach in 30 seconds. Salazar opened all channels. "To all ships, clear firing lines. Disengage from near proximity. Let it collapse." The final barrage came from the Varrock, Kaymor's own Lance battery, recharged for maximum yield. The shot drove into the central spine of Tharos, and for a moment, it held. Then the station imploded. A flash wave of gravitational energy rippled out, silent and bright, as the superstructure fractured in on itself, and the remaining hull plates were drawn into the dying remnants of the star. The sky blinked white, then returned to black. Silence fell. Debris floated where the Velkathan once ruled. In the stillness, no one cheered. There was no victory cry, only breath, the silence of consequence. Inside the Delphus, Salazar looked out across the battlefield. Fragments of Velkathan steel drifted past the forward viewport, glowing faintly in the dark. Kaymor's face appeared on the screen beside him. One eye swollen, jaw plate cracked, but unbowed. Salazar nodded once. Kaymor returned it. Steenmark spoke quietly from behind. The last transmission from Dravion's council chamber went dark 10 seconds before the core collapse. "They knew," Salazar said. "And now," Stenmark added, "so does everyone else." The war had begun long before Nithara burned. But here, above the ruins of Tharos, the lie had ended. "Hey, you're still here. That's awesome. Hope you had a great time with the story. Remember to hit the like and subscribe buttons. It really makes a huge difference to the channel. And hey, I've got something else for you. I've chosen another story that I think you'll really enjoy. Just click the card right here, or hit this one to jump into the full playlist. See you in the next one.